This session is Recharge the Rain, Building Community Resilience Through STEAM Education and Actions. This is a NOAA Environmental Literacy Project of Arizona Project WET and Watershed Management Group. Welcome to Tucson, Arizona, in the heart of the Sonoran Desert. Tucson is the third fastest warming city in the United States, according to a Climate Central report. We have been experiencing the effect of climate change as witnessed by the hottest summer on record in 2020. July was the hottest month ever recorded until August came along, smashing all temperature records and putting our vulnerable communities and outdoor workforce at risk. Our summer monsoon was non-existent across much of our area. But we can see a lot of rain in one event, as witnessed this year, where the airport received 47% of the summer rainfall in one 5-hour event. This type of activity leads to localized flooding events, as demonstrated at this local school. Most of our region is experiencing drought. After a dry lightning strike on June 5th, followed by hot, windy days, the Bighorn Fire spread through our beloved Catalina Mountains, burning for 1.5 months until July 23rd. It burned close to 120,000 acres, roughly the size of Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and 38% of Queens. Because of our climate threats, we started Recharge the Rain, a NOAA-sponsored environmental literacy program project in January 2017 to build community resilience by sinking the rain and growing shade. Green stormwater infrastructure supports native shade trees that assist in cooling urban temperatures, capturing carbon dioxide, and reducing flooding events. In the face of these threats, schools can become a hub for climate resilience, where students, teachers, and the community join together to take action. We are Arizona Project WET, a University of Arizona program developing water stewardship and STEM literacy through teacher professional development, direct student outreach, and community engagement. And Watershed Management Group, dedicated to training and assisting communities in water harvesting practices for sustainable living and healthy watersheds. Teachers and their students are key to this project. We started with a cohort of 16 teachers from 12 schools, with a majority of the schools serving predominantly minority students in neighborhoods that would greatly benefit from green infrastructure. This cohort of teachers engaged in professional development and curriculum development over the first 3 years. Teachers taught the engineering design of rainwater harvesting to their students. This led to the installation of student-designed schoolyard rain basins. Parents, teachers, school community members, and Recharge the Rain staff, including water harvesting professionals, come together to assist on installation day at the school. Schoolyards were transformed from barren and ugly patches of dirt to beautiful rain gardens, providing shade and habitat by sinking the rain, simultaneously reducing flooding on campus and nearby roads. Rain basins have become living laboratories where students can create their own investigations and also participate in citizen science projects like CoCoRaHS and the USA National Phenology Network. They also join in on our heat monitoring investigation that was started in the summer of 2019. Working with researchers at the University of Arizona, our preliminary data shows that shade does make a difference in reducing extreme heat. On average, shady areas are 15 degrees Celsius cooler than sunny areas, and that can increase to the 30 degrees Celsius cooling difference in the middle of the day. To date, we have installed 12 rain basins, transforming over 43,000 square feet of urbanscape and supporting 72 trees. Our initial cohort of teachers have become mentors to a new cohort of teachers that we are working with in our new virtual world of COVID-19. Today you will learn from some of the teachers as they share their experiences. Welcome to the world of Recharge the Rain, where teachers, students, and the community are empowered to take actions that mitigate our climate threats in Tucson, Arizona. I am your moderator, Betsy Wilkening with Arizona Project WET, and I'll be monitoring the chat for questions. We're going to hear a variety of perspectives from an amazing group of teachers today. Without further ado, let's hear from them.
We are here at our school, Santa Rita High School, starting our rain garden. This is the first year we're starting.
And we have a variety. We have fruits, vegetables. We're kind of using like a certain strategic where we use a tree as the overshade, and we go down the bushes. We have like just like shrubs and stuff, and then we go down like little grasses. So it's all like it uses less space and we get more plants.
Are installing a rain garden here with all native desert plants that are adapted to low water, and we're capturing rain off the roof of the gym. And we have a large cistern that is going to support a food forest of heritage trees, figs, citrus, and pomegranate. And then we're capturing the water off of the roof of the gym to flood all of these basins and support a rain garden and pollinator forest here. And so I've got my senior students from my agribusiness class here, and we're working with members of the Watershed Management Group and Arizona Project WET to install today.
So we're doing an installation of a rainwater harvesting project as part of our NOAA grant that we have called Recharge the Rain. And it's to build community resilience against our threats of increased temperatures, extended drought, and extreme storm events. And so the installation that we're putting in today is to grow food. It's also to prevent flooding, because this area, this roof that it drains off of, ends up flooding the parking lot. So they're trying to sink the water and grow some vegetation, reduce some of the urban heat island effect by making a nice tree canopy, and produce food with the rainwater harvesting tank.
Kids have designed this whole thing. They have done everything from calculating how much water they can capture off of the roof on an annual basis, and then as well on a per event basis. So if we get 1 inch of rain, they know how many gallons of water they can get off of that roof. So there's some great math involved. The other thing that they've done is they've identified the plants that we're putting in, and they've identified how much water those plants need. So they actually created a water budget. Here's how much water we can get out of the sky. Here's how much we can save. Here's how much our plants need. They've gone through and they've designed the basins and how water will flow and infiltrate into the ground. And so they've, I mean, it's rainwater harvesting 101. They got it. Well, we are installing a large cistern because some of the food plants, our figs, our pomegranates, our citrus, are going to need additional water. But the rest of it, after we get it established, it won't need additional water at all. We'll probably water it until, I don't know, maybe a couple of months until the end of school, and then after that, it's all rain.
So pretty much for the rainwater, we build walls of dirt around the sides of the garden, and then we have the tank raised higher than the whole garden. So when the water falls, it'll either go to the tank, or if it doesn't go to the tank, it'll flush down into the garden. And we have the walls up so it can't overflow to the sides, and we kind of just control where the plants we want it to go to.
We try to make it a more natural look, so the water just flows on down, and it looks like it's been here for many years. When we've just started it today.
The students chose this location because prior to building here, this was just a bare patch of ground, and the students knew that they come in this way for school. Parents come in this way to go to sporting events at the gym. Other guests and speakers come in this way to get to the auditorium. So this was going to be a high traffic, high visibility area, and the students chose this area.
We have Palo Verdes, mesquites, we have a couple fruit trees, figs, peaches, we have some shrubs, some grass. Well, we based it mostly on the water usage, because at first we only had a 1,500 gallon tank, so we had to base it on how much plants we could plant using only 1,500 gallons.
All along the way, it's the students that have been making the decisions. The students decided they wanted to do a food forest. The students decided that they wanted it at this location. The students decided on what plants they wanted to plant. And so it has been completely student driven. I've given them the resources. I've taught them how to do the math and some of the structural stuff, but everything else, it has been their decision making process to implement. So my hope is that as we continue to do these types of projects all across the campus, we'll see student stress levels go down and we'll see achievement come up.
I just worked with some wonderful young ladies on building a giant rockway for the water to flow, the overflow. And they're saying, every time I walk by here, I'm going to be so proud of this. I didn't think I could do it. So it's pretty neat. I think they're also going to really appreciate what they've done for this campus and see how the campus looks and realize that they've done some positive things at their school.
I've learned that teamwork goes a long way.
Having like lower or younger siblings here too, it kind of like it passes it on to them for them to like take care of. Like we kind of start it and they just continue it. I guess it's a pretty good feeling, like knowing you started that and then you can come back a couple of years and see it, knowing you started it.
It's something we are leaving behind and starting for other students, for future Santa Rita High School kids, and start off.
Because I never would have thought that we would have actually been doing this. Like I thought it was just a vision, but Mr. White helped us actually make it come true.
Hi, I'm Mark Reynolds, and I worked with community transition programs. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about our gardens, rainwater, and service learning. Community transition programs works with students with intellectual disabilities in an employability and life skills program. One of the sites that we go to and support is the Food Conspiracy Co-op Garden. This garden uses rainwater from a storage tank, basins that collect runoff from parking lots. We also use municipal water for irrigation. There are 24 70 square foot sunken beds for vegetables and flowers. We also have 4 fig trees and 4 citrus trees that are limes and lemons. These are a couple of my students, Eddie, who's carrying the bucket and holding the sunflower, and another one of my students, Gary. Behind Eddie, there's a 2,000-gallon rainwater tank. We always try and use this water first before we go into the municipal water supply. These guys are filling up buckets that we use in various capacities. One of them is a drizzle bucket where we fill it up and it has a very small hole drilled in the bottom of it. And this lets the water drain out onto some of our desert adapted plants and trees. We also use the 5-gallon buckets to put water onto our compost so we know exactly how much water we're adding to our compost. Here in the desert, our compost dries out and we need to add water to it periodically. So it will break down. Eddie is standing here between our fig and citrus trees. This is the main usage of our water that comes from the tank. The trees use a lot of water. And you can see though that we did get quite a few figs, and they're beautiful mission figs that we had to fight the birds for this summer. But we do get citrus and we do get figs from them. This is some students from Tucson High. They also work in our garden. We grew a lot of pumpkins this summer. And these students, as you can see, have come back to school, and they're going to process these pumpkins to seed saves for next time we plant, and also to cook them and eat them. Another thing that we do at the Food Conspiracy Co-op Garden is we supplement school tastings. A lot of school gardens cannot grow enough food. in their own garden to feed everybody. So this is one of my students, Saul. He's preparing scrambled eggs and kale for a school tasting at Drachman Montessori. The eggs came from the chickens at Drachman, and the kale came both from the Drachman garden and also the Food Conspiracy garden. Part of the service learning aspect of what we do is we make donations to different nonprofits. This is donations we're going to the Sister Jose Women's Shelter. A lot of shelters, women's shelter and homeless shelters that we donate to don't get a lot of fresh vegetables. So they're very appreciative of these vegetables. They get to have greens and carrots and tomatoes and squash delivered to them by our students, and they get to cook them that day. The Advanced Community Training Program that's our classroom where we start our day before we go out to different agencies. This was when we were installing our rain gauge for CocoRoss. That way we can measure rain and also report it on the CocoRoss site. Our students are learning how to use screwdrivers and drills, digging holes, tamping, and a level to make sure that our rain gauge is working well. We had a blank slate for a garden, and we got some desert adapted plants, and you can see behind one of our directors there, this huge expanse of grass, and it's in a sunken area that collected a lot of rain off of that concrete and also has a downspout from one of our buildings going into it. And it was just going into this sort of patchy grass area. So we decided to create a garden there. We started out with a Green Reach grant from the University of Arizona to get some stock tanks and some buckets that were used for irrigation through a Oya system, clay balls that feed the plants as much water as they need when they need it. We also planted some desert adapted and non-desert adapted plants. We laid down mulch, we put in a bird feeder, we put in pots with vines. And all this was part of a plan to make kind of a sensory garden for our students. A lot of our students have autism, and we thought a sensory garden would be a nice place for them to go and decompress when they need to, and actually for all of us to go and decompress when we need to. So there's some mulch, some succulents, some desert grasses, Mexican petunia. And here's another part of that garden. This is another part of our property where we have kind of more traditional desert basin type rainwater harvesting garden. You see the downspout that goes into depression or basin. We've got some desert adapted plants in there. We have a volunteer Palo Verde tree. We have creosote. We have some penstemon and desert grasses that are growing there. Here's another look at it. And it's actually really taken a beating. I only go and water it with municipal water once a week during the summer, but they're desert adaptive plants, so they're still alive. And I think once we get some rain, they will begin to thrive. This is an area that we need to do some work on. As you can see, there's a line down the center where the rain comes off the roof and has made an indentation. One of our projects coming up is to divert that water somewhere better, maybe plant a vine along the fence. This is our biggest project. We have a downspout that when the rain comes down, it makes a U-turn right over to that metal box, and there's a hole there and the water just goes under the building. So we need to work with our district's facility management to make that rainwater go somewhere more productive. I mean, I imagine it's producing some, rot and mold perhaps, but we'd like to see it go over to some trees or shrubs. So we went from a blank slate, and with a little hard work and mulch, we turned it into a sensory and desert adapted garden. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Amy Flores, and I teach gifted and talented education at Drachman Montessori, Kinder through 8. And I am also the ecology coordinator at Drachman. I've been there for 9 years and have helped to maintain and grow the ecology projects there. So one big, huge project that we did was building a rain garden. We built the rain garden with middle school students, but then I have now taught the planning and designing portion of creating a rain garden with elementary school students. So I'm going to share both parts. Part one, how did I build a rain garden with middle school students? And then part two, how do I teach this material to elementary school students? So the screen that you're looking at are the top two pictures are actual designs by students that were in 8th grade. And then the bottom picture is the actual design by Watershed Management. So our first part of where do we start? How do we even talk about rain gardens with students? Well, we have to start with why. Why are we harvesting rainwater? Why is it important to water your garden with rain and not municipal hose water? Well, in Tucson, we have been in a drought for 20 years. So I think that's a good starting point when we talk about why. We harvest rainwater because we have to. We don't have enough fresh water. And once we get started, how do we figure out the water budget with rainwater? So we know we get about 12 inches of rainwater a year in Tucson. If I know the area of the size, the garden that I want to grow, then I can get a volume. I can use the annual rainfall as my height and the length and width of the garden, and I get a volume. And if I convert that number into gallons, then I have my annual water budget in gallons. So here is our garden area, and I'm just pulling up my annotation tools so I can draw some circles for you. But this, actually where I'm drawing the yellow circle, is where we planned on putting our garden. So yes, at Drachman, we had a really big garden area. But for our water budget, we got to use an even larger area. So the whole roof space, I actually got to use this area as well, because there are 4 gutters, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, that the roof collection, whenever rain falls on the roof collects it and spits it out the gutter here. So we can add the rooftop area and the actual landscape portion to get a really big water budget. So Drachman ended up with a water budget of 100,000 gallons, which was totally amazing and allowed for us to plant a really lush garden. And here's a picture. The last one was a bird's eye view from Google. And this one is me on the street, first day of school. I love to take pictures after it rains so I can see where's the water pooling up, what happens with it. And so what was happening is all that wonderful rain that was falling on the roof was just coming out these gutters and being directed out actually to the street. So it was going down the sidewalk there, ending up on the street, and it was flooding so much that they put a grate and a drain into the street to even take it away from there. So we were losing not 100,000 gallons, because remember, some of that rain was just falling right on the landscape, but we were losing about 60,000 gallons of water every year off of the roof, just running out into the street and not being used. So we had the location. We know there's a problem. Here's me with some 8th graders in front of the potential garden area. And there's us building it, and actually who's holding that jackhammer to dig down and get a basin going is one of the students. And that's after we've put in the plants and mulched it. And I am using a hose. I am watering it with fresh municipal water, but that's only temporary until the plants were established. And we ended up only having to do that at the Drachman Rain Garden for about a year and a half. And here it is just several months after it was established. So we put it in the end of April, kind of beginning of May 2018, and this is it in September 2018. So it has grown a lot since then. And we are very proud of it. So, part 2, how do you scale this down and what can you do with elementary students? The first thing you need to do, if you have elementary students and you want to teach them rainwater harvesting, or you want to build a garden with them, is you need to get outside. You got to get them out there, get them excited, have them like plants and the outdoors. So I took my 5th grade class a couple years ago. I had 5th graders at Drachman, and I took them to Camp Cooper. And there, it was super fun. They got really excited. They want to know more about native plants. They start to understand that we need to conserve our precious resources in the desert. And then we've got our starting point. So step 2 is getting them excited about using rainwater. So they kind of saw when you go outside, it's real dry outside. There's not a lot of rain. Everything looks really dry. So when you tell them how much rainwater we get and we start to look at pictures of flooding, it gets them really excited, and they think, okay, so yeah, it's really dry, but what about when it rains? How can we save that water? How can we harvest it? How can we plant that rain? So one way that my kids got excited is they wanted to, after they designed their gardens, they wanted to kind of paint them and paint a mural and share their excitement about rain falling in the desert and helping our garden. And then step 3, we got to learn about native plants. So once we know we're going to use rainwater, we're going to make a garden in the desert, and we know, okay, we don't get that much water. So how do the plants make it between rain? When they're waiting for rain, how will they survive? Well, the native plants are drought tolerant and they're used to it, and they will survive. Plants that are not from here, though, are not going to have a good chance at survival. So we got to learn about native plants. And then what? You've gone outside, you learned about, you're excited about rainwater, you know about native plants, and you get started. But with elementary school students, or with high school students or middle school students, or yourself, just start with a small project. Rain gardens don't have to be big gardens. They can be tiny, tiny mini basins. So here are some elementary school students. They're actually 4th graders digging some basins in our garden. And if you don't even have to start from scratch. Even this project looks a little tough, right? So say you want to scale it back and go even smaller. You can even start by just digging a basin around an existing fruit tree. So if you have one that has, especially one that has this volcano sort of shape, this is keeping rainwater out. Right now, the rain is falling and it can't get in. There's a barrier. It's great for hose water. You bring your hose, you're watering it into the middle of the volcano, and you're thinking, okay, it might store it. But you're losing any potential rainwater. You can't plant or harvest that rain. And if we look over at this picture, here's the rain coming in. So if you have an existing tree, you might want to just spread out that basin, move the dirt away, kind of dig down, and allow yourself a collection space so that rainwater can pool up and be used. So just want to make sure. No volcanoes, people. We need to have basins. All right, so whether you're working on a rain garden with middle school students or if you're working on a rain garden with elementary school students, it's nice to know that you can start very, very, very small, but you could also get really complex because there's a lot of good learning when you're building gardens. Thank you for coming to this session. I hope you enjoy your time at our conference.
Hi everyone, my name is Carrie Vonier and I am an art teacher at Basis Tucson North in Tucson, Arizona. And I'm coming to you from downtown Tucson, beautiful downtown Tucson on Tohono O'odham land. And thank you very much for coming. And this is my colleague, Porter McDonald.
Hi everyone, I'm Porter McDonald. I'm the other art teacher at Basis Tucson North in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our art curriculum that we've been doing around water and climate change issues. So with that, I will start presenting my screen and go. Okay, so we've been doing water curriculum now for at least 3 years. Some of these projects have been going a lot longer than 3 years, but pretty comprehensively for 3 years in the art program. So the first thing I'm going to tell you about is the Living River Words Contest, which is both a local and a national contest. It's been going on since 2006, and it's all about an exploration of how water moves through the landscape. I've been doing it for about 8 years now, mostly with the 5th graders, but it's been great, and we get to do a lot of different things with it. Sometimes the students will explore wet and dry lands and make art about how us living in a really dry climate, but we still need water and we still have these dry riverbeds. So how does the water move through our environment, and what does the water cycle look like here in Tucson? It's a little different than how students are taught about the water cycle. It's also an opportunity for students to explore methods of water conservation. So I encourage them to think about how they do conserve water currently and how they will conserve water in the future, and hope that just gets passed down to them and their families. We also have done nature journals with it, which presents opportunities for students to not only learn to draw realistically, in this case they did photography, but it also gives them the opportunity to explore how things grow in the desert with or without water, and to connect art and science. For this project, we really teamed up with not only the science teacher, but the Latin teacher. They all take Latin in 5th grade, so we were able to connect some of the scientific exploration to some of the scientific words, and then not only make art from that, but learn a color palette too. So it was a great journaling activity. And we took those journaling activities and we made tiles out of them. So you can see that they drew out, my daughter's gonna invade right now. They drew out some of the plants that they saw and used a real strict color scheme with it, and they took those to create tiles. We went a little bit farther with the tiles to talk about the desert plants and the texture and all the patterns that they saw within the texture and the leaves, and to also create patterns on symmetry and balance on a tile, and what would that look like. So they watercolored them and then took them and actually made tiles from them, and then we were able to make benches and decorate the benches with the tiles. Another thing we did a couple of years ago is the students, when they were learning about this, they did a home audit on their water usage, and they did a mystery box too, where they were able to pull out different types of tools that we might use to create or to distribute water in our houses, like hoses or shower heads, and talk about if they can conserved water or not. They did the audit both in the 5th grade class and then later on in the high school class, where they monitored how much water they were using and then changed out some of their aerators. And this all led to this big, awesome project that we were able to get a grant for, the schoolyard program grant, where we had students design a rain garden, and ultimately were able to put the rain garden in. So they studied not only the plants that grew in the area, but how much water usage the plants needed and how much rain we collected from the roof at our school, and created these drawings of how they would like the water garden, the rain garden, to be mapped out. And then on top of that, we were able to put benches in the rain garden and add the tiles to it. So here is the day that we had the parents come out and dig up the grounds at Basis. We don't have a lot of plants around our school. It's a pretty harsh environment, really, but this made it a lot more interesting, and to have the parents there. Our goal for this was really to make an outdoor space that was usable for the students to wait for their parents. This is an area that they wait for their parents, but also for the students to use for different things, and it's been largely successful. So
yeah, thanks, Carrie. That was great. Yeah, the Rain Garden project was kind of this amazing culminating event that we did on a weekend through the Watershed Management Group, and parents were there, people from all different grades, and we just basically spent about I'd say half a day installing this, and then we continually go in and we have weekends where we fix it up, add mulch, adjust the different basins and berms so that it's working functionally. So one of the projects that I did in my 7th grade was this Generations water bottle. I really wanted to create a project that used hard data from the NOAA site and different sites available, and actually figure out creative ways to visualize that data. So in this one, there are actually a couple of goals. In addition to the data visualization, obviously we wanted to create an awareness of climate change and climate data through history. Creating the bottles, I thought, was a great way to tie in the water theme, but also to, there's a sense of empowerment that students get when they are able to create functional dishes that are like, oh, it's not just art, I can actually use this. And then it takes, then they can refill that bottle and hopefully use less reusable, or I'm sorry, throwawayable, disposable, that's the word I'm looking for, water bottles. So. Here's another example. So the bands that we see on this bottle, they're horizontal. Some of them chose to do them vertically. They each represent a year. I had them choose the birth year of a great-grandparent, a grandparent, a parent, and then their birth year. So they had 4 years that spanned, so that's where we get the name Generations water bottle. And then the designs within each different band represent the number of 100-degree days that Tucson has had that year. So I really wanted to take a wide view of data. So they really got a sense of climate change over a long distance, because when you're just looking at these micro little data sets, you don't really understand the bigger picture. And I think for the most part, it really worked. So those water bottles can actually be read. The students made a key. So they had about 10 stripes, and then on each stripe in clay, on the key, it corresponded to a number. So they could actually read each other's water bottles and figure out what the how many days over 100 Tucson had that year. Okay. So here's another example. You can see the bands, the design bands go vertically. This design changed from these diamonds to rectangles. And I thought this is a quote from her artist statement. The numbers I used made me realize that weather in Tucson used to be hot in the 1930s, but got cooler until the 2000s, where the heat tripled, which I thought was a really powerful statement. Carrie and I also decided that we wanted to teach a new class. We tried this last year. We called it Art and Urban Planning. It just worked out so that I was the only one teaching it. We were originally going to share it, but that didn't work out. And the goal of the class was to kind of look at how Tucson was designed and figure out what would Tucson look like in the future, and how can we design a city to be more sustainable, looking at the micro, our own homes, and then the macro in terms of city planning. We researched sustainable ways of building, like what are some innovative ways to build and design homes, from using just trash to using passive solar, different types of energy. It was really, really interesting. And they did presentations on that. And then they also designed their dream home using at least one of these sustainable building techniques, as well as rainwater harvesting techniques. And then we went into the rain garden. We did a lot of observational drawing and a lot of just work outside, looking at plants, which I think was probably the most valuable. With this class, we also did the weekly reporting of the rain gauge to the NOAA site. And we also tried to take a couple of field trips to different water-related locations in the city. For example, where they're recharging the rainwater or the gray water back into the San Pedro River, which I thought was pretty interesting. Okay. So here are a couple plans for the future homes. You'll see some rain gardens in there, cisterns, as well as some other innovative building technologies. This was a really fun project. We studied a bit of architecture, but I think it was a little too technical for them. They really wanted to, this was the beginning art class, and they really wanted to learn how to draw. So at that point, I was like, all right, let's go outside. So we went outside. And here are some of the observational drawings that we did outside, just basic value studies, charcoal drawings of different plants in the garden. Here's the banana yucca. There is one of the palo verdes, another yucca, and another palo verde. I really like this one because she really wanted to focus just on the texture of the bark, which is so iconic for this type of tree, if you're familiar with this type of tree. Okay, so after we've been doing this for about 3 years, what now? Some things worked, some things didn't work. As always, you really need to teach the same projects over and over again to really kind of get them perfect. we definitely are going to continue incorporating all these lessons and projects into all of our classes, as many classes as possible. There wasn't quite enough interest for the art and urban planning class to do it this year. We might try and revive it again in a couple of years, but so we just decided to try and sprinkle these lessons into all of our different classes. One definite thing that we're both doing a lot of is the observational journaling and the sketchbooks to prompt a deeper thinking about climate change, about our future, and as well as using sketchbook exercises to practice observational drawing. Excuse me. Maybe another rain garden, we're not sure. We'd like to get one in the front of our yard, front of our school. So that's a possibility. And then also we're thinking about doing a journal or publication that highlights not just the art, but also creative writing and poetry, photography, and possibly work with other schools to kind of reflect upon climate change and what Tucson's going to look like in the future. Okay, so in conclusion, I found personally the projects that worked the best were the ones that encourage just this general awareness of the outdoors. I think that's something that, you know, I personally really took for granted. I go camping, I'm outside as much as possible, but a lot of these kids aren't. And so when you're in the classroom and you're working on these projects, some of these things seem so abstract. But when you get them out, and having this rain garden as kind of a living laboratory was so nice. But getting them out anytime, even during the pandemic, getting them out into their own yard to look at the plants in their yard and do observational drawing, I thought that was definitely the most helpful. Again, to like inspire them so they can marvel at the beauty and wonder of the natural world, so they begin to care about it. And once they care about it, then they're inspired to protect that landscape. But it has to start by just being in that environment.
I totally agree. And I think one of the nice things about the pandemic in some ways is that we are able to get them outside in their yard a little bit. So thank you again for giving us a little bit of time, and see you later.
Thanks again. See you later.
Right, I'm a humanities teacher, so I appreciate you science geeks all inviting me to your conference. I love teaching science, and I do a water unit that I've been doing probably since 8 or 9 years now, and I started my unit here at Utterback Middle School. So I came here to do my acknowledge that we are on Tohono O'odham land, and we're close to Yoeme Village here, so we're on Yoeme land too. I don't work at the big district middle school anymore. Okay, so I will try and address both ideas, like when you're at a big district school, what it's like to work with community partners. But now I work at a small public charter school. They're both Title I schools, and both have inclusion special ed. Here we are, we're in front of my school, and I just want to say that because our school is right in the middle of downtown Tucson, a lot of our partnerships are based on proximity. We're a site-based school, so a lot of the partners I'm going to take you to right now are within a 20-minute walk of our school. So one of the great things about doing presentations of learning is that the people that have come and helped you in the classroom and the people who you visited on field trips can come to your event and be part of the audience. And you're changing the relationship with the kids from the consumer of the information to the presenter of the information. All right. We're over by Las Milpitas Community Garden. It's a really large community garden in Santa Cruz. Watch. Our school is a longtime partner in the garden. And last fall, we held our presentation of learning here, our Water Conference here, just after a big storm. Here we are at Tucson Water. They've been really great community partners. So their education outreach person, Valerie, has set us up where they've met us at the tar plant. My students have had sit-downs in their conference room here. They've also made themselves available for independent research where students have come over to interview employees here. All right, this is the state courthouse. So one of the things we did is we talked to our students about the No More Deaths trial, Water in the Desert and Migrants. And we attended one of the trials here. It wasn't Scott Warren, it was one of the earlier trials. It was super informative for the kids. We did meet Scott Warren, and we went to a lecture that he had. The museum and the Holocaust Memorial Center are one of our main community partners downtown. We can walk here in 15 or 20 minutes. And they're really engaged with students and progressive causes. So in terms of environmental justice and our water unit, we have come to see a Scott Warren lecture here, which was really amazing. It was within a couple of weeks of him going to trial. We have also held our water conference here where the kids did roundtable discussions in front of an audience. I wanted to talk about our visit to CAP, to the Arizona State Drought Contingency Planning meeting held at CAP headquarters in Phoenix. It just so happened it was the day after our water unconference, so we spent the day and drove up. They set us up in a conference room with a view of the control room for the entire CAP. We watched the meeting and discussed the process and the stakeholder points of view, and the kids wrote down their questions. Towards the end of the meeting, they invited us in to the meeting room. The Santa Cruz River Heritage Site, and what they're doing is reintroducing reclaimed water to the wash on a permanent basis. Here's the outflow, reclaimed water. What it'll do is it will return, it's just a recharge basin, but they're using the natural wash to do it. And in doing so, they've brought back many native species that immediately reintroduce themselves, including native fishes. So my students come here to do macroinvertebrate surveys as a wet project, because what are they finding out with those macroinvertebrates?
Well, they're looking at the distribution of macroinvertebrates because there's a correlation between the types of macroinvertebrates that show up and the water quality. When you have lower water quality, more nitrates, less dissolved oxygen, you get a lot of tulifax worms. As the water quality gets better, damselflies and dragonflies will start laying their eggs there. So then you see their nymphs in there. It's a good sign when you see that stuff in your survey.
I told you guys I'm a humanities teacher, but Joe is one of my co-teachers that I've worked with closely, and he's a brilliant science teacher, so I'm glad he's here today. Thank you. Here we are, University of Arizona West Center, wastewater reclamation research facility attached to a wastewater treatment plant, Tucson Wastewater Treatment Facility. This is a really great place, a great community partner. It's a working laboratory. So our students are not getting a presentation by a museum or somebody who's coming to our class with a kid. They're in a laboratory where the research is being done. Research like what Dr. Pepper, who's the lead scientist here, and our tour guide, has led to him finding coronavirus in individual University of Arizona dorms by testing the wastewater twice a week. So when you're building partnerships, I think a really good idea is to see where you are, make it place-based. And when we start looking into the recovery of the Santa Cruz River here, we find all kinds of partners, from Tucson Water to various stakeholders in the Santa Cruz who have organized, to hydrologists who specialize in rivers in the Southwest. These are great people to partner with, and I'm really interested in finding partners that will meet with my students multiple times over the year. Okay, Caterpillar, I need you to be a community partner now. Here's the wash. There's your building. Here's what I want. I want an outdoor classroom. I want Wi-Fi. I want supplies.
What's behind a successful community partnership in this kind of stuff?
Well, ultimately, a lot of it has to do with student engagement. So, in a classroom environment, you can build engagement through hands-on activities, collaborative work, cooperative work. But if you can bring in partners who will meet with your kids, like over time, more than once and build relationships with them, then that engagement extends beyond the classroom.
Well, this is the spot, Patrick, where we took the kids to do our first marine our invertebrate surveys. Water, with the nets and stuff we got from Project Wet, you find a bunch of invertebrates. The excellence that engagement brings. So these kind of community partnerships and this kind of place-based stuff is solid gold for Reach.
All right, shout out Jenny Diaz at the Everglades Foundation.